So this morning, we brought you Frannie Leautier as the first keynote speaker of the day, and it's my honor and pleasure, really, to introduce to you our second keynote speaker, who is really fabulous. Also, she is part of the Leadership Council on SDSN, as well as has a really extensive biography and full of lots of experience. But let me just briefly give you a background on Mrs. Bineta Diop. Ms. Bineta Diop of Senegal is the founder and president of Femmes Africa Solidarité. She has also been named the special envoy of the chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security. She has led numerous peace-building programs, including a Women, Peace and Security initiative that resulted in the creation of a strong West Africa women's movement, the Mano River Women's Peace Network, which was awarded the United Nations General Assembly Prize in Human Rights in 2003. I would also like to add that Mrs. Diop has received numerous honors and awards, and in 2011 was named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Please help me to welcome Ms. Diop.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon. I hope you have a good lunch and we can have a good dialogue, a conversation, I would say. I have been asked to discuss with you the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda. And yesterday I was listening to Professor Jeffrey Sachs on the issue of concrete actions, solution, practical things that can be done. The world we want in 2030, the dream. And I'm going to focus on some solution, in particular one, creating an enabling environment to prevent violent conflict, and looking in particular the role of women, how we can contribute to peace, not be seen as victim. This is how we see on the media, but also how women can contribute positively, be agent of change in our society. But when we look at the context right now, we see the main challenges of sustainable development, the absence of peace. I could even recall in 2010, when we were looking into the MDG, we say that out of the 34 countries lagging behind the MDG, 20 are conflict or post-conflict countries. And sometimes those countries have faced greater risk of relapse into conflict. This is one of the maps. You see the risks that are there, not just in my continent, but in many places. My continent, DRC, Central African Republic, South Sudan, but also in Europe, Ukraine and the Middle East. And what do we see in those conflicts? Violence that, are going to impact on our sustainable development, the sustainability of our development, and the fact that our next generation, the future generation, will not enjoy the development that we dream. We see also the consequences of those conflicts in our continent, and I think that the slide you're going to see here, talk about the displacement of population, and in particular, you see that Africa, the continent where I come from, we see that massive displacement of population, but also other phenomena, like the use of children as child soldiers, and the fact that women's bodies have been used as a battlefield in the war. A lot of atrocities. I can just tell you that I'm right now being part of a commission of inquiry in South Sudan. I cannot tell you what's the finding of the mission on South Sudan, but we can say that South Sudan, right now, the population are suffering. So we need here to look into the root cause of those conflicts and identify ways of fighting them, combating them. And here I want to discuss, as I said, Africa, because that's the continent I know better. Recently, when we were looking into the past 50 years of Africa and looking forward for the coming 50 years, the African continent have adopted an Agenda 2063. So it's go beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, where we say 50 years down the road, the vision of Africa will be an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. That's the dream in 50 years. Hey, down there, and you can see that peace and security are main priorities for the continent. If we wanted to achieve this goal, we also see that we need to make peace in Africa. The other issue that this slide says is the citizen of Africa. We understand that Africa's own citizens are the assets that we have, the resources. It's not just the natural resources. And it is said that the population report recently, more than half of the global population growth between now and 2050 is expected to be in Africa. The population of Africa could double from 1.1 billion to 2.4 billion and reach even 4 to 4.2 billion potential. So you see huge population of Africa, women and the youth. Half of that population will be women. If you match it with the youth of our continent, we will be 70%. Those are the assets that we say that they should be the one involved in building peace and development. They should be contributing effectively and participate in the sustainability of our development. Of course, we have made some progress. We should not just look the glass half empty. We should also recognize that, we have done a lot in terms of making peace happen. Liberia, Sierra Leone, Burundi, with the support of the international community, Rwanda. But they are still fragile states. I will not today talk about Ebola, but you can see that those fragile states are at risk when you look at the security issues, but also the health issues of the population, poor infrastructure, so on and so forth. So you see this fragility of those countries. They found their sources on the impact. For me, is the impact of those crises on the population who are really affected. And it will take time for them to recover and for them to contribute in a meaningful way to the reconstruction of their nation. So those phenomena that we saw in Liberia, Sierra Leone, other country, they are still existing when I'm talking. Either it's in South Sudan, where we see 7 million people are at risk of food insecurity right now. The majority are women and children. When you go to Central African Republic, you will see that in Bangui, the capital alone, 1 million people fled their home through the crisis. That's, again, what we see in the field. In DRC, the former UN Special Representative, Margot Wallström, you remember, she said that 48 women were raped every hour. That was a report a few years back. It's improving. But we have still Al-Shabaab. This is a new trend of violence, which have violent bomb attacks, as you see, Boko Haram, spreading in Nigeria, who are kidnapping girls, but also denying them the basic rights to education. That's what we are facing right now in our continent. So you all understand the root or cause of those conflicts. I should not go really dwell on this, but let me just recall that poor governance, weak democratic institution, the lack of respect of rule of law, human rights violation, and social injustice. And that's why I like very much the fact that we are looking the issues in the SDSN, social inclusion. When people are deprived of their fundamental rights, excluded, marginalized, and denied meaningful participation, either it's the political or social life in their countries, you will see a lot of rebellion happening. So we need to look at those indicators here in SDSN and look how concrete programs and initiatives can be put in place. I remember what my dear sister Ellen Johnson Sirleaf said one day. She said that looking into social injustice, she said the root cause of the conflict is not simply poverty, but poverty brought on by exclusion. Exclusion in its broadest context, exclusion from resources, from power, from education and information, from the opportunity to better one's life. Unfortunately, the majority of those who have been deprived of those fundamental rights are the women. So what we need maybe is to dismantle some of those structures, especially those that have oriented on violence, especially violence against women, embedded in the culture. Sometimes we say this is about culture, sometimes we say it's about attitude, tradition, but it's a male-dominated arena. That's the reality. And we need to look into how to rebuild those institutions and make sure that they can respond, being inclusive, participatory, and bring the voices and the faces, expertise, know-how of those that right now are excluded. They have knowledge. So my boss, I'm a special envoy of Madame Zuma, she said one day, Binta, this struggle is a marathon, not just a sprint. It will take a long time because in the end, you have to change society. I think that maybe because we are taking 30 years to say that we will change, so within the 30 years to come, we will see sustainable development happening all over the world. So one case I wanted to present to you is the case of Women's Situation Room. I'm very glad that SDSN have adopted. It's a small, tiny solution, but you hope that that solution can be replicated. Let me refer to what the Security Council said, UN Security Council in 2000. They said that this world will be free of violence against women. They adopted what we call 1325, UN Resolution 1325, which says that women should participate in peace process, be protected in conflict, and all measures be taken to prevent violence against them. But the resolution did not say how, where, when, and with whom and how much. No indicators. But what I can say is, if you evaluate that resolution, the UN Women recently have shown that out of 31 peace process, it was from 1992 to 2011, only 9% of negotiators are women. 2.4% of women were mediators in process. So it means that the UN think that women cannot mediate. 4% of women were signatory to the final agreement. We have a good case to Liberia. One woman was the first one to sign the peace agreement in Akosombo. So by being an observer of those discussion and dialogue, we can see why women are participating positively in the reconstruction of Liberia. But the 1325 for us, women activists and women that are fighting on the ground, is our tool. It's our tool to combat, despite the fact that it is taking time to implement it, it's our tool. And the case I'm presenting here is a tool to contribute to create a safer environment for elections. You might recall some of those elections. Kenya was one. It was just in CNN, BBC, you open it and you saw in 2007, people killing each other, political violence. My own country, Senegal, was just going about violent conflict because of the election that we were facing in 2012. And I think that the Women's Situation Room, this is the project, was able to be implemented in Senegal in the prevention, but also in Kenya in the recent election. So the Situation Room, the Women's Situation Room, put together the forces of women and their leadership. And here we say 1325, women actually can mediate and have capacity to do that. What is new in the Situation Room is we use ICT tools to mobilize. There is really a wide range of ICT that have been used in any Women's Situation Room that have been put in place so far. It detects early warning signals and deploy early response action for prevention of violence. So it was also experienced in Liberia, in Mali, in Guinea. We are just hoping that it will be also implemented in the coming election in Nigeria. Let me just share with you some of the instruments that the Situation Room use. For example, mobilization. So you just saw the Situation Room where the women were in control. Mobilizing the forces, because in any war we see that what the rebel or others warring factors is mobilizing their armies. So the Situation Room mobilized the force of women through mobile phones, reaching remote areas, giving information on election, civic education, mobilizing to go out and exercise their writing votes. Grassroots women, communities, but also mobile caravans. The Situation Room also mediate, because that's one of the roles that the women can do in the society. You know, sometimes you belong to two warring factions. That's the fact that women can be belonging to different family, taking care in the mother-in-law, family-in-law, but belonging to another ethnic group or even political parties. So the mediation here you see, in our traditional way of dialogue, we say that, you know, these are women who are coming from different political parties, but they're signing a symbol to say no violence from our political parties. That's what, by mediating among the groups. Another one is the monitoring of elections, because we need to give confidence and credibility. So deployment of monitors, but also using the media to be in any polling station, but in a minute sending out to the Situation Room the result of those elections. I think that's give credibility and transparency to the voters as well. So these are some of the elements that I wanted to share with you. There are so many other layers used by the women in the different countries that I have named to make sure that the Situation Room be effective. We are also continue to learn. I'm very happy that SDSN is going to produce a research that we can share with others and which can be replicated, but also be adapted, because in every context you need to adapt following that context. So again, the Situation Room received President Macky Sall, who was elected in Senegal, and applaud the efforts of the women to say that, you know, thanks to you, we refrained from the violence and we were able to go to election and build that peaceful environment. When Mrs. Clinton visited Dakar, she applauded the initiative of the Women's Platform as well in her speech. President Obama, recently in Dakar, 2013, recognized the cultural values that guided the women action in the Situation Room. DISO is dialogue. So we use more the issue of we will have tension, conflict will erupt, is part of the human being, but how do we prevent that we become violence? So the culture that we say Ubuntu, that Mandela used to say, our Ubuntu, our culture of dialogue. This is what the DISO that we need to use also in our society. So I wanted to conclude. Conclusion is, maybe I have been tough with my continent to say that, you know, we need to solve our problem, but also this dark side, but there are also, you know, the good side of it. The good side of it is we have a lot of natural resources. That's reality. We have also the human resources, and that's where I said that more having the competent human resources, and I'm glad to see that the university here, but those of you who are really building the capacity of the Africans in terms of giving them the capacity in the universities, but also in other spheres in health, we need it more than ever. So Africa has economic growth. the highest, one of the highest, sometimes two-digit growth. But for me and for many of us, this economic growth should bring social transformation that go down, deep down to the people, and in particular, making the difference for the women and the young people of Africa. I will stop here and be open to questions. Thank you.
Okay, we do have microphones, and please begin asking, and we'll take like 3 questions at a time.
Okay. Hello, Mrs. Diop. I'm from Peru, but I'm also studying MDP in Waterloo University in Canada. I come from a country where violence was very common during the 80s and 90s. And was witnessed how women stand up against conflict, social conflict, and terrorism. My question is regarding to the use of ICTs and women, because there is a common understanding that women usually doesn't use media, social media, or internet, especially rural women in rural areas. Would you please elaborate a little bit about the demography and the geography or the women involved in ICTs in your movement, please? Thank you so much.
Let's take another one, please.
Deprivation of education. Deprivation of education rights. Do you think that it is coming from within the family construct? If yes, or can there be something done from the perspective of the family law so that the government takes those steps which gives some protection to the women to have their rights in the family? Then I have another question. It's regarding the reporting room. What is the influx of reporting in the reporting room? What kind of reporting is more that you're receiving from the women? Thank you.
Okay. Let's take this question in the blue, please.
Okay. Hi, my name is Amanda. I'm also with Waterloo MDP program, and I'm interested in hearing your opinion on the inclusion of men in gender development. I'm of the opinion that people are responsible for their actions, but I also am of the opinion that men's strict gender roles are also a large part of the cause of gender inequality and conflict. And I think that the development sector is a bit ignorant of men's needs as gender beings. So you mentioned women's bodies as the terrain of war, but there's a growing body of evidence that says men's bodies are also the terrain of war. There's a large number of male victims of war rape who don't have access to services that women do. So I'd like to hear your opinion on the inclusion of men. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take those 3 questions, and then we'll turn to you for the second round. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. I think it's so important that social media, in particular in the mobilization, but information sharing. When it comes to the Women's Situation Room, for example, when you have somebody in the remote area who is following the elections and can immediately connect to the Situation Room where we have people immediately receiving the right information at the minute that it's happening, but also calling the authorities, because sometimes you see irregularities that is happening and the observer don't have the ability to do anything there because it's not their role, it's just to observe. But by sending the message to the Situation Room through the media, but also through the cellular phone, you can have rapid response. Social media, for example. We use it when the young people that was trained in many countries on conflict transformation, they will link on the Situation Room with the Situation Room to give information. This happened in my country, this happened in Nepal, this happened. So this is the way that we can give you our own experience. So the social media, there was a lot of young people connecting. When you visit the website, you will see online even that some of the people in Kenya and others were connecting through the media just to make sure that their experience are shared within the women. So it's a big mobilization tool, but also the information. Because women who are in the remote area, on the local language, you can use a cellular phone because many of them have cellular phone. So we have the hotline in the Situation Room, but sending messages to say that this polling station is closed, it's open. So, and also the message of peace to say that send the young people to vote, but don't send them to fight in the streets. So there was a lot of use of the media, and in particular cellular phone and social media. Somebody have talked about education and protection. I don't really get it very, but I think it's about maybe the Nigerian girls in terms of the protection of women, safe schools, if I understand you rightly. And I think this is where at the end of the day, is education that will make a difference in changing the mindset. So if the young people are deprived to be at school, I think that Africa is not going to meet the education, even though a lot have been, investment have been done a lot on educating our young girls. But it has to do with the environment, the violent environment where we are, either it's in Nigeria but elsewhere. But we need to look at how we can protect those girls. It's in the society, and there was this campaign to say, bring back our girl. I hope that that campaign will continue to make sure that those girls who have disappeared, it has happened in many places, not just Nigeria, it happened in Uganda, you remember years back. And we need to bring back those girls to school. The issues that in the reporting room, as you said, in the room, what was the issues that have been discussed? You know, sometime when in our elections, you can see that warring parties sometimes are also intimidating outside the polling station and sometimes inside the polling station. Our observers, and especially the media that we train and we deploy, they will send messages to the Situation Room and say that we see people outside the polling station who are intimidating the voters. What can we do? Immediately, the Situation Room will call the authorities around, because we have all the numbers of the authorities that day to say, go in that polling station, we alert you that that person should leave the environment. So we react. And other issues are also about gender issues, the women, because sometimes we say the code, we are interpreting also the electoral law. Electoral law sometimes says, in my country, for example, that women that have their baby with them to vote should be at the front. They should be the first one. So if they come and they are on the queue, basically, we just ask and call the one who is in charge of those polling stations to allow, to implement the law, in fact. But it happened also that interpretation between the two opposition or the parties bring some conflictual among the two parties. So what we do is also going outside in the media to clarify the legal points that we have in front of us. So that brings the dialogue between the warring faction. So in the situation room, we have statistics. We have also legal advisor, political advisor, and those who are really the technical that are accompany the work that's done by the women. The last point was exclusion of men, the gender role. Of course, you are right. We find men that have been also raped. It's happening in many places right now. But and also we know that we cannot get there without also involving men in the solution. But right now, as I said in my continent, the women need to be supported in particular to be part, because they are excluded right now. Men are not excluded. Some are excluded, of course, because we have marginalized group, etc. But the majority, if you look at them, are the women. So if we wanted to bring a society that have l'équilibre, comme on dit, we need also to make sure that women are included. And this process is to make them participate, but also to make them their initiative more visible and show that they can contribute to building a future in their society. So I think that those are the questions that have been raised, if I have.
Okay. Additional questions, please? Yes, sir?
Madam Diop, thank you very much for a brilliant presentation about some of the pressing issues affecting Africa. My name is Wally Coley. I'm a Gambian and a new graduate from the University of Washington in Seattle. I studied GIS at the Geography Department at the University of Washington. Okay. I just want to talk about the Gambia. I just want to know what the Senegalese government, and in particular the Senegalese people, are doing to expose the gross violation of human rights in the Gambia by the Yahya Jammeh regime. I personally feel that the denial of basic human rights of the Gambian people equates to the denial of basic human rights of the Senegalese people. Having said that, I also want to address another issue concerning the political refugees that go to Senegal from the Gambia. I want to know how the Senegalese government is treating the political exiles from the Gambia that are Gambians that are residing in Senegal. How are they being treated? And finally, I want you, since you are a person of influence and power, I'm appealing to you as an African to use your power and influence to be passionate about the issues affecting the Gambian people. We are one people. Yahya Jammeh is a dictator. He has violated all the rights of the Gambian people, and he's exploiting and expropriating the resources of the country. Please help us bring about fundamental changes in the Gambia. We cannot talk about development. We're not going to talk about development in the Gambia or anything about sustainability management or development without the restoration of the democratic process and peace in that country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you, Madam, for your insightful presentation. I'm Douglas from Ghana, and I'm an MDP student from University of Winnipeg. My question borders on violence, election violence. Oftentimes you see that, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, because of greed for political power, these governments hide behind national sovereignty, create conflict, and when they create conflict, they seem to protect themselves. They don't care about the ordinary people, the women, the children who are displaced. And so when an attempt is made for justice to prevail, then they say, oh, in the case of International Criminal Court, it's targeting Africa. And I was appalled to see when African Union met and decided unanimously that a certain president has been indicted by the International Criminal Court, and so that should be suspended until the end of his term. And so my simple question is that, can we escape justice to secure peace in order to ensure sustainable development? Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much for saying that peace has been ignored in the debates around sustainable development. Thank you so much for saying that the patriarchal power structures need to be dismantled and rebuilt. We need a women's situation room in every single country, and we need a mass mobilization for peace and disarmament, not just in Africa, but worldwide. So thank you so much for saying that. I hope you're going to join us on Sunday for the People's Climate March, because that also happens to be the International Day for Peace. We need a connection between peace and disarmament and protecting the planet and eliminating poverty. So keep speaking truth to power. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll take one more, and then that will be it. Yes.
Shamim Talukdar from Bangladesh. I work for an NGO called Eminence. This is a local NGO. I really appreciate the space we have got today now from Bineta. But I'm sharing a practical perspective of policy level for women, like in terms of their reproductive health, their rights, education, as well as economical empowerment. In Bangladesh, you know that we have already 50% of the women, and the maternal mortality was also very high, though we did progress for last 15 years. But the problem is also related to the early marriage in our country. Our average marriage for the women is around 14. So government trying to do lots of intervention, and we have little bit success, but there is a social other problem that need to be handled in a different way to overcome this early marriage problem. So recently, our government is thinking to reduce the marital age from 18 to 16. So that might be some way to overcome the social problem. But in terms of the health problem, in terms of the malnutrition problem, might be this is a big decision in terms of making the sustainable solution. So my request to the audience and special panelists today, that what should be the global level policy for the uniform policy for the all countries, especially for the women, for the marital age, which need to be implemented in all countries, not in terms of problem solution by different way. Also find out the way how we can really solve this problem. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, the Gambia. Yes, we are brother and sister. Gambia in Senegal. One is colonized by English, another one colonized by French, but we speak the same language, which is Wolof, right? So I can understand the frustration of my brother. I'm Senegalese, you are Gambian. As you know, Gambia, Yaya Jammeh was elected by the Gambian, and I think that your advocacy have been heard by everybody here, because I think that the responsibility is all of us, because we hear a lot of early warning signals, and those signals are coming from the Gambian that are especially abroad. So early response, one of the mechanisms I can also recommend to you as active actors in the Gambia is also the panel of the wise of the African Union, to go and, you can approach them to go and meet with the president, I think. The other issue you raise is regarding Africa, how do they deal with those who are behaving badly. One of the things I know from the African Union, I'm not the African Union because this is the member state, I'm coming from civil society. So what I also know that, when you do a coup d'etat, you cannot come and sit at the African Union. You don't attend, I prevent you to come and sit. So that's the one of the policy of the African Union. So I think that active engagement with the African Union and the panel of the wise on early warning and early protection can be a good one. I work with the women of Gambia, in Casamance, because Casamance is a border between, in Senegal and Gambia, and also in Guinea-Bissau. This is some of the capacity building that we do for the women to, in their prevention, but also in their participation. Of course, on the refugees in Senegal, I think that if they are refugees, is the UNHCR taking care of them, of the refugees, if they have the status. If they are also in families, I think that we have relation between families in Gambia and Senegal. That's, if you wanted, we can have another discussion after in terms of how we can support the women in Senegal. There are many organizations I can put you in contact if you have cases that those associations in Senegal can approach them and support them. I cannot talk for the government of Senegal. I have never been a member of a government. I'm civil society. The other issues that was raised is from my brother from Gambia, from Ghana, on the issue of political violence that's happened, and you name them. You say that this is the sharing of resources, is the greed of the people, because the only thing they see is resources of the country that they wanted to share, but don't care about the people, the citizen. And I think that's where we need to mobilize the citizen. The response is, in country of democracy, you might want it desperately, but people will vote for you because they will vote for an agenda. They will not vote for an ethnic group. They will not vote for a family. They will vote because you have a clear agenda. That's why we need in Africa to do more awareness raising, and this is where ICT and other tools can help to educate our people. Any countries in Europe or elsewhere, they go and rightly vote for the person they think that is going to fulfill their vision. So we need to do that citizen mobilization around democracy, but also those basic issues. ICC is a case. Of course, you say that the justice needs to be done. You cannot have peace without justice. And this is some of the issues, not only ICC, but even at the grassroots. You cannot bring the whole countries to the ICC. So you need to have at various levels of justice. We need to reform in some countries the system because it's not responding. We need to build more judges, and all the time I say more women judges to listen to the women plight as well in some reform of the system. And sometimes at the very local level, you need also to have, in the terms of reconciliation, you have some kind of gachacha, for example, in Rwanda, where the people understand. But at least you don't have the culture of impunity. You need to address it at various levels, local level, at the national level, but also at the international level. If we have seen the tribunal of Rwanda, which was based in Arusha, so where a lot of people have been also brought to justice, that was put by the international community. It has to happen. Without that, you cannot have reconciliation. The Women's Situation Room, the lady who spoke brilliantly, I will be part of your march on the issue of climate and disarmament, and especially I'm sure that you will bring the gender perspective of climate. But I think that the SDSN group that is dealing with it on disarmament, but also on climate justice, will take into consideration the aspect of gender, because gender is going to be mainstream throughout all the solutions that we see. It's not just isolated, but we make sure that it goes throughout all the solutions. The gentleman from Bangladesh, I think that the similarity that you are talking about, early marriage, but also maternal mortality, all these are issues that we also have in Africa. And recently I saw that in the African Union, they were saying that they came with a new law. Of course, always new law, implementation is the issue. And I think that against early marriage, it was a very good document, and we will see how member states are going to implement it. We can share those experiences with you, because it's the women groups that have pushed the AU also to come with those new policies. In the MDG, I am sure that we have to look at it carefully, maternal mortality, but also the issue of protection of girls, rather taking them to schools than getting them married and seeing the consequences that are health and so on and so forth. But MDG have also to respond. So the new solution have to respond to this as well, not just for Asia, but also for Africa. Thank you.
On behalf of the Global Association and SDSN, Ms. Diop, thank you so much for being with us.